Welcome to Policy Matters, Episode 8. Policy Matters is a video chat series between Teri Talent of the McCormick Center and a guest author in early childhood policy. The chats take place and are distributed on a quarterly basis. Our guest author for the past 3 episodes has been author Stacie Goffin. This is the culminating chat in our series with Stacie on professionalizing the early childhood education field. In Episode 8, Stacie and Teri explore some possible roles in the early childhood education profession and how the profession might address compensation.
Good morning. I'm happy to be here with Stacie Goffin for the last of our policy chats on the topic of professionalization of the field of early childhood education. And we have had a lively discussion so far. And I just want to say thank you because it has just been enlightening for me and has been such an amazing lead-in to some of the work that's going on by NAEYC right now in terms of power to the profession. So I just want to take this opportunity right here to recognize that Stacie has been the thought leader that led to operationalizing a lot of this thinking about what are our next steps. And I'm just so happy to now get to be involved in those next steps as well.
Thank you, Teri. That's really generous, and it is an exciting moment in time for us.
It really is. And so I have been thinking a great deal around this issue about understanding what it takes to be not only to be a professional, but what it means to be a profession. And the idea that you can't be a professional without there being a profession first, and the need to narrow and make very clear what the responsibilities and accountabilities are for those who are in the profession. And of course, coming to terms with the fact that my role in higher education is such that really, maybe I'm not in the profession of early childhood education. And what does that mean? And coming to terms with it, because my identity for the last 20 years or so has definitely been that of being an early childhood professional. So it's taken some reflection and insight and heavy conversations with people like yourself and others to realize that it's okay to me. I feel okay about being what NAEYC calls an allied professional. And that's really, there's need for lots of people in our work. And it isn't disrespectful. It is just the need in moving our profession forward to narrow the scope of who is an early childhood educator in the language of power to the profession. So I'm wondering whether or not you have given thought to how to communicate that, because everybody isn't going to take as much time as I did to get on this journey. And what's the best way to help people really accept the fact that the narrowing of the professional roles is a critical piece of moving the profession forward?
So that was a great segue, Teri, and as I've mentioned to you actually in an email following your great blog, I so appreciate how much time and effort you have put into thinking about this, and I think frankly it's going to take a lot more of us to join with you, with me, because I've been at this for a long time trying to get to the same place. It didn't happen overnight. To think about these issues. And so I think these policy chats, and I'll offer right now, if anybody wants to continue these kinds of things, I want to encourage it, because I think this is how we come to a shared meaning and understanding about the choices that we're going to have to confront around roles, but some other things as well. And so if I can preface the conversation about roles with 2 comments. First of all, the profession is a part of the field. And that field, in turn, is part of a larger field called early childhood. And that early childhood field, in turn, includes other professions, like pediatricians, for example.
Right.
So you can be in an occupation, and that occupation can be incredibly valuable and important to the success and supporting the success of those in the profession. So I really think we all want to avoid demeaning those of us and the role we play, those of us who may be in the early childhood education field, but not necessarily directly in the profession. Second point I want to make about thinking about these roles and which roles is that being in a profession is premised on the fact that there is a specialized knowledge and that the application or use of that knowledge is not broadly dispersed within society. And it's because society needs access to that expertise that warrants then professions having both a different structure and also a different relationship with the state. So one of the things that we're going to have to do is to be really clear as what are those disciplines that in fact are central to our practice, and then how does that play out in practice? And then that's the preparation that is so crucial to those individuals who are part of any profession. And it comes with, as you noted so well, obligations and responsibilities as well as some privileges. So to the role of a higher education faculty member who's in early childhood education, to be distinguished, if you will, from the disciplines that support that practice. So child development is a discipline, and it informs the practice of early childhood education. And the professions that I have studied, they all require their higher educators to be licensed to practice. And if you think about it, those licensed practitioners are helping emerging practitioners to be prepared for their roles. So in fact, those roles, the role of a higher educator is typically included in professions.
So how does that work when you think about teaching in the P12 world? As you think about the practice that leaders are teachers first, and of course we've moved away from that a little bit, but that principals are licensed teachers, and then they become licensed administrators. And those who teach principals, or those who teach early childhood teachers or elementary or secondary education teachers, they're not licensed in the way in which you're talking about, correct?
Correct. Some states require principals, and we're talking about K-12, principals to have at one point in time been a teacher, but not necessarily to presently in their role as a principal to be certified as a teacher. So neither K-12 teachers or teachers who are in teaching pre-K in the public school system, nor their principals would be considered licensed professionals. They are certified by the State Department of Education through their boards, state boards of education for the most part. There are a few states who actually have freestanding boards that are not part of the Department of Ed.
Yep. So it's a really interesting distinction, because I do think most people think in our talk about the profession of early childhood education, they are thinking about it as moving in the direction of a licensed professional like teachers in the P12 world. And so it is a important distinction, and it might impact just even, some of because we're trying to create an opportunity where professions go across settings and not necessarily all relate to a school system, a public school system, and the certifications that are issued by a particular work setting, correct?
Correct. And the reason that matters is because it shifts the focus to the practice of in our case, an early childhood educator. The drive, the motivator, the passion, if you will, around becoming a profession revolves around our wanting children to be through early learning and development, to fulfill the potential we believe they are all capable of having. And that we want that practice then to be as consistent and high level as possible, regardless of the setting. So the competence goes with the individual, not with the program setting.
Yeah, I mean, and so it's going to be a unusual situation. So thinking about this from a compensation point of view, how does the fact that the practice occurs in all different kinds of settings with different funding streams, both some state, some federal, some private market, how does that relate to the ability to address consistently compensation? Because even though that's not the driving force for becoming a profession, it is an important piece of recognizing and valuing that work, is that the work should be fairly compensated across all of these settings.
And it's also important to recruiting individuals who have made a commitment, both
Right.
through their preparation and hopefully longevity to the work. So yes, it's really important.
Mm-hmm.
So again, to my knowledge, professions don't have a singular funding stream.
Mm-hmm.
So in that case, we will not necessarily be odd,
Okay.
in the scheme of things. So if my physician can be reimbursed for her services through private pay, Medicare, employer insurance, Medicaid, and I may have left out, the Affordable Care Act.
Right.
So there are a range of funding streams, and they vary in their amount. So we're going to have to certainly step back and think about, now we're funding the individual, if you will, we're reimbursing the individual for the service provided. That's a different frame for us in thinking about financing.
Mm-hmm.
And then looking at all the ones we have and which ones can be redirected and which new ones may need to be created. So even though from my personal perspective, I would not put a person whose sole purpose and primary role is advocacy in the profession of early childhood education. They are a grand example of an occupation within the field that is hugely important.
Mm-hmm.
And all professions have very large lobbying
Mm-hmm.
forces.
Yeah, and what makes me think about is with, administrations come and go. There are changes in leadership at the federal level and the state level that in some ways having a profession that isn't tied to particular funding streams is really a safeguard in terms of creating an advocacy wing. The idea of advocating for quality professional early education is a role that right now we leave up to others. And that coming with the creation of a strong profession, it creates an opportunity to have consistent advocacy that is able to address the rise and the fall of the sea in terms of funding sources, et cetera. So I actually see that this is a critical time for us in terms of a profession, because we are really at a time where, where is the voice for the early education profession? Are we unified in that voice in doing the kind of work that you're describing that the AMA might be doing for healthcare?
Yes, and because I'm someone who's spoken a lot about how to date we've been driven by policy and a lot of the fragmentation
Right.
that we experience in preparation and financing, and been driven by policies that aren't always focused on what is in the best interest of young children and their families. And so I say that always with the caveat of saying that it's one thing to be driven, it's something else to use it in the service of. And so what you just described is the important, crucial role played by advocacy in the service of ensuring that competent practice is available and accessible. Preparation then is really central to becoming a profession. And so there is the opportunity for a lot of soul searching and change within early childhood teacher preparation programs across the country.
Well, that is a wonderful place to end our conversation today, Stacie, and be a provocative thought for future conversations about what needs to change in order to best support the growth of the profession of early childhood education. So thank you so much for today's chat and for the entire series. It's always a pleasure to be in conversation with Stacie Goffin.
Thanks, Teri. I'm delighted to have had this opportunity.
Thanks to Stacie for joining us, and thanks to you for watching. What thoughts do you have on this chat's topic? Tell us in the comment section below. Until next time.